Yeah, so I'm kind of stealing from ChatGPT here by accident, but that's exactly my lived in experience. Is I'm far more pessimistic and prone to negativity when I haven't slept. It's funny, isn't it? Because as soon as your emotional processing goes out the window, it's the negative emotions that come to the fore.
Yeah.
And the positive, because you think about it, it's quite a vague term. In a way, you could expect that maybe you'd just be happier than normal and not as stressed as normal, which you should be. Maybe you should be stressed about something and you're not because of your poor emotional regulation. It never works out that way. It's the same when people have emotional regulation issues and they go to the doctor. Emotional regulation issues means low mood, effectively. It never works the other way around, which is kind of funny. It gives you an insight into human psychology and the negativity bias that we have, right? Is that our baseline is effectively to be anxious and pessimistic as a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Because effectively, we go back all the way to caveman times. You needed to be on your toes at any given moment in case there was a potential threat to your life.
I think your negative emotions are more required to help keep you alive than your positive 100%. Emotions, and therefore if you get a choice between only able to regulate one, well, let's chuck the positive emotions away. We don't need to worry about those immediately.
Without question. It's funny because in the modern world everybody sort of seeks happiness and fulfillment, and the vast majority of people will struggle to achieve that. And everybody suffers with periods of low mood, but not everybody goes through periods of high mood. And that is, biologically, kind of, to be honest, we're not designed to be happy. That's like a modern and particularly Western attitude, isn't it? If we're being, this is kind of the thing that I say for me, in terms of my good mental health and my happiness, it's something that I have to sustain, not something that happens to me. It's a goal that I work towards. So for me, if I don't go on a daily walk, for example, and get a bit of fresh air, and to be honest, like a little bit of nature and some vitamin D, I find it really hard to be like a happy, non-anxious person that day. Sleep is the bedrock of all of this for me. If I don't get sleep, I'm very twitchy. I notice that my leg shakes. I notice that I can't think particularly straight. I notice that I'm prone to sort of rumination. And all of these things are horribly impactful on poker play.
Absolutely.
We have such a unique job. It's so strange, isn't it? Because I'm reading this week about like the 4-hour work week and how people are more productive with, the 4-day work week, which looks increasingly like something that is going to be a reality.
Become the meta.
It is going to become the meta. I mean, they've just finished the biggest study of it ever. And what they found was something absolutely absurd, like a huge increase in productivity. So they kept people on the same pay, but 4 days a week, same hours. They just cut Fridays out. And they found this huge surge in productivity, huge surge in profitability for the businesses. And I think it was 90% plus of the businesses that trialed it decided to keep it as a full-time method.
It is very interesting because I wonder if there's also an overlap between that and sleep as well, because obviously having a day off, maybe people catch up on the sleep and get more well rested. And from the various literature that I sort of read preparing for this session, there is a sense of sleep being a little bit like a bank where you can make up for a bit of lost sleep, catch up for it. And there's also the ability to become chronically sleep deprived, where you kind of have chronic levels of higher anxiety, higher reduction in emotional control. And on the other hand, if you're well rested, I think again, I'll quote ChatGPT here, our brain is better equipped to handle the stress and regulate emotions, and we're more likely to feel calm, centered, and in control of emotions, even in challenging situations. And now you can imagine the poker universe presenting a lot of challenging situations for us that will try and make it a challenge to stay feeling calm, centered, and in control of the situation.
ChatGPT is a good bot.
Yeah,
it's a really good bot. Yes, it's actually funny you say that. On Auto Sleep, which is the app I use with the Apple Watch and the phone, tells you your sleep debt. It doesn't tell you your sleep.
You don't get a score, but
you get sleep credit and sleep debt.
It
tells you your percentage of sleep that you need to catch up on. And I know that it's accumulative, and as far as like, if your natural biology is to sleep, say 7 hours a day, and you sleep 5 for 3 days in a row, you're going to find that eventually you're going to oversleep for a few days to catch up. It is accumulative, like you just said, which is really interesting. But yeah, so if I lack sleep, I get quite anxious, and my poker performance does. In the relation, to bring it back to the 4-day work week, I was thinking is that it's not an option either to reduce your hours as a poker player or to kind of phone it in. You know, people turn up to work and they spend like 30 to 40% of their time like browsing the internet, and just sort of taking little breaks, going around the water cooler, all that shit. Obviously, you're not getting paid while you do that as a poker player. But then I realized actually that's not true, right? And I've modified my schedule to reflect that. And I've modified my schedule to give myself extra time to get the amount of sleep that I want. And I'm going to start strictly turning the lights out at the exact same minute every single night, and setting one of those half an hour alarm clocks, you know, that wakes you when you're at your lightest phase of sleep.
Yeah.
So this is one thing that largely gets ignored. So I actually am reducing my hours in poker, and I expect to increase my output. It did force me to think, could those two things be possible? I think the answer is yes. And it's for the following reason. I do have to take very frequent breaks when I'm grinding, and when I'm poorly rested, I'm very late to work every day. Okay. Now, I don't have a boss. I don't have to be at work. You know, I'm lying in bed and I say to the boss, you know what I mean, Tom? And that's not me in bed with another bloke.
Do you want to stay in bed? Do you want to stay in bed all day, Wubs? Yes, I do, Wubs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have a boss, so I'll be late getting to work. So I've already lost time from my regular schedule when I'm not slept very well. And then when I'm playing, I need regular breaks. I need to play fewer tables. And if I'm honest, my output's not as good. You know, and it is a physiological process where my brain is just foggy and I can't think as deeply as I normally would. So if I'm in a really difficult spot, when I've had a lot of sleep, I'm going to be trying to solve that spot as hard as I can because I have enough energy, I have enough glucose in my brain to do that. On a day where I haven't slept so much, I'll take the simpler option, which requires less focus. And that is simply because I'm not able to solve the puzzle. I don't have a score to sort of match that, like your Aura ring, but it's certainly something I know. So I'm going to give myself more time to sleep, and I'm going to have a very regular sleep schedule. So if you're watching this and you're a bad sleeper, and I consider myself a rubbish sleeper, any light, any heat, anything like that, I need to be freezing cold, pitch black to get sleep. I'm very sensitive in that regard. One of the things that I've never really been that good at, and it's a huge thing. So, Tom, I presume you studied a bit of Matthew Walker coming into this, right?
Yeah.
And another one called Michael Brenner, who did a seminar for Elliot Rowe. Both of those talk in depth about sleep rhythm as well as sleep time, right? So it's part of this whole sleep hygiene, which is something that I wasn't really familiar with. And the whole thing is you need to recognize your chronotype. So you need to understand whether you're like a night owl or like a lark, like a morning person. You can actually go on and do a little test, a chronotype test, to find out whether you should be going to bed late and getting up early or the other way around. Now, I know as poker players, we tend to go to bed late and get up late. For some poker players, it would be better even to sacrifice a little bit of action if your chronotype is early mornings, because it means that that's how you're going to be the most ready. You could probably play more volume in less time at a higher chip EV and make more money than if you were, say, trying to hunt the best hours.
Yeah.
But one thing that they talk about religiously is sleep rhythm, is to go to bed at the exact same time every day, get up at the exact same time every day. I know that that's what Jack does. He's very, very set. I think Jack gets up at something ridiculous at 10:18 every morning, Tom.
Oh, yes, very specific. Nice.
Very, very specific.
But also quite a nice time to wake up, I think. For one of the things I think I know we both struggle with, and can be the burden of a lot of poker players, is it's easier to start falling asleep very late and waking up very late. And so you fall into this sort of like 6 a.m. sleep time to 2 p.m. wake up time. And it very quickly can become your rhythm, and you actually can sleep okay. The problem is, as soon as you do anything that isn't, you know, your normal poker schedule, it's like you get knocked out of it. And so, for example, I have to go on a kind of mini sort of stag do thing this weekend. And they're like, oh, can I drive? I was like, yeah, I can drive. And it's like, what time are we leaving? And they say, oh, not too early, like 10:30. And I'm like, that's 3 hours normally before I wake up, kind of thing.
Yes.
And they were thinking it's quite a late start. They actually organised it to be a late start for me. And I was like, I appreciate the effort. I mean, they've all got kids and they're waking up at 6 a.m. But it's horrendous for me. So I'm going to crash the car, but it's their fault. So
Yeah, well, so, and that's the coroner will record that verdict. You know?
Yeah,
Like
I
it
think
was
so.
the passenger's fault for organising the stag.
Yeah, should have done it 10:30 p.m. Would have been fine.
Fun fact about that, I think it's somewhere around the 5 hours of sleep. So if you get 5 hours of sleep and drive, you are more dangerous than if you had 2 pints of beer.
Yeah,
Which is
just about a manage above that.
So what you need, I think, if you have 2 pints of beer and 5 hours of sleep, that might counteract it.
I think that's how it works. Yeah.
Is it not?
I think that's how it works. Yeah.
2 wrongs definitely make it right. That's actually a very terrifying insight into how.
Let's not get well started on his drink driving history, but.
Oh God. Oh. I've never done it for reasons. Never actually got in the car drunk. The point that we're making here, I mean, that is really telling. 2 pints is enough, to be honest, for someone to be past what's called the Bulmer peak, which is like 1.9 pints.
If we were playing poker, having drunk 2 pints, we'd very acutely be aware that it's very hard to play your A game. And yet what that demonstrates is that and I think, to be honest, playing poker even worse so, because driving a car is not typically it's not really a very emotional activity, right? You have to concentrate a little bit and do stuff, and maybe you'll lack a bit of concentration. But in poker, it's like, well, everything can be so emotionally jarring. Look at this guy doing this and this and this, and we have a constant dialogue with our own sort of inner chimp brain, if you like, where we're kind of saying, "Oh, I can't believe this guy, min raises 10-2 off against me. Like, what does he think of me, or whatever." This constant ability of like our ego feeling damaged, or we feel really proud, or we whatever. And I think those in particular that's control, and that emotional kind of stability is what very quickly gets knocked out when you don't have sufficient sleep. And so that's why I think it's so important, as even more so than I realized historically. I'm from today onwards, I'm going to be even more acutely aware of how well have I slept. And if the answer is not great, I'm legitimately going to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to go too heavy on the poker. Like, maybe I'll drop the table count, maybe I'll play lower stakes, maybe I'll do whatever, maybe I'll play shorter sessions or whatever. And conversely, have I slept great? Do I feel great? Okay, well, now's the time to maybe push volume a little bit and go for a higher leadable place, because I feel pretty good and I feel pretty happy and I'm pretty content. And I think having that flexibility in your grind and using sleep as a bit of an indicator in terms of how.
I think it should be a thermometer, really.
Yes.